My first job was at an unknown multinational coffee chain as a barista. I was also in school doing my philosophy degree, so it was a good taste of what my future had in store for me. I took orders, I made drinks, and I cleaned. Because I was the youngest, I was only 17 at the time, they made me do all the worst jobs, like scrub the toilets and take out the garbage. And they had this deal special during the summer where they had people line out outside the doors to make these blended drinks, and making blended drinks is the worst. I remember one supervisor, his name was Colin. He's really skinny and had curly brown hair and a long beard. He kind of had this like Nicolas Cage look, and he kind of talk like that, like, hey man, you're gonna roll with the punches. He had a very hippie attitude, but he was a really nice guy. It was just us one shift, and it was completely dead outside because it was pouring rain. So I was just kind of standing there on the counter, and I saw outside, because the walls were made of glass, and I saw outside directly ahead of me this figure. He was just standing there in pouring rain, and he was a big guy. And it was weird because it was raining so much I could barely see him with just his figure. He was kind of toppling over. And me and Colin looked at each other and looked at him, and we could see his body go. Run out to help. It's pouring rain outside, drenched, all wet. But the first thing I smell is piss, just piss. He just smells awful. So I did what any good Christian would do. I went back inside, I locked the doors, and I started my mega church. No, we dragged him inside, we sat him on the chair, and I thought we should call the ambulance, but Colin started talking to this guy, like some weird horse drug whisperer, like, hey man, it's gonna be alright. The guy was completely out cold, he couldn't support his head, he was kind of in between consciousness, and he's like a baby. And I was freaking out because I've never seen a drug overdose before, but Colin said it wasn't an overdose, he was just having a bad trip, and he just talked him through it, man, it's gonna be alright. Eventually the guy sobered up, eventually the guy sobered up, he turned, and eventually, did I piss myself? Sorry, can I get a coffee? What I learned from this job was customer service. Colin was the epitome of customer service, and we gave that guy coffee and left him on his way. The company, it was a California company throwing money at students so that they could promote their brand on campus. They'd send us a bunch of like free merch, and we'd set up these tables to promote their product. I'm pretty sure they would send us a bunch of products for us to test, and we would distribute free samples for other students to partake. I'm pretty sure they got this model from drug dealers. The program got shut down because the person was fired, because obviously, but I ended up keeping a bunch of stuff that they sent. I still have a bunch of branded chapstick that's like 15 years old. They don't expire, right? My life like to think so, but I'm willing to get rid of them before I get rid of my stuff. It's my stuff. In here, I like free stuff. A work-study position at my university, it was my longest tenure even at any job, really. I don't know. I was there for 3 years, not very long, but the longest job I've ever had, because I have commitment issues. Incidentally, I met one of my exes during that job when I first started, and another in that job. This time I went through some of the worst things in my personal life. Depression, anxiety, all the exes, and I was also working 3 to 4 jobs while going through university, and I didn't know what burnout meant, and it was a fever dream of a couple of years. Is what it means to be a true professional. If you're having a tough time in your personal life, don't tell anyone. Professionalism means pushing down all your thoughts and feelings until you taste a little bit of blood and your eyes get a bit teary and you just keep working. Concierge at a hotel, and he reminded me of like a butler or like the service person in John Wick. he had the epitome of professional. It's like he had no other personality other than the job, and I really looked up to that. And I went up to the bartender and I just asked, like, how long has this guy been working here? And he's like, oh, Greg. Yeah, he's had a traumatic brain injury. He had a lesion in the amygdala and he can't feel any emotions anymore. And here is, to be a true professional, you gotta be a little brain damaged. The job I held during my undergrad, one of the 3 to 4, depending on how you count it, I worked as a bartender at this music hall in their donors lounge. So it's kind of like a VIP area for very rich people who donated a lot of money to this music hall. I was a server at a restaurant that was attached to a hotel next to an airport. It's a long sentence, and you wouldn't believe the amount of degeneracy that goes on in a restaurant. Hard drugs, everyone because of my Christian values. However, I did learn that I did feel a bit overpaid by the tips for the amount of work I did compared to my other jobs. My other jobs were much harder than this. This was a hard job, but I had other jobs that were harder and I got paid much less. So I don't know who's complaining. It's probably an unpopular view. Whatever. Who can really break it down? I'm just moving food from one place to another and just trying to talk to people, filling their water cups once in a while. Obviously there's stuff I had to do in the back, but you know, the chefs are working much harder. The cooks are working much harder. They're not getting tips. Are you crazy? Another job I had, I was selling advertisements in the school newspaper for my university, and it was a sales job essentially. Trying to cold call people, saying, hey, do you want some advertisement space in our school newspaper? It's very difficult. Got ghosted a lot. And that taught me the importance of rejection. I also had another job that was temporary event and catering staff. It was much less steady and it just depended on what event you're at. And my coworkers, the people I saw, it was always a different bunch, but it was just always people at their lowest, just starving artists and people who just failed in their career or they just needed some money. Probably one of my most degrading, but I look back on it fondly. One event was at a Pride after party. It was a private venue. It was in someone's mansion, and the dress code was you had to have no shirt on and you had to put on a vest and keep the buttons open and serve hors d'oeuvres like a manservant. And they paid a lot because it was a private event at a mansion. So I did this for an afternoon. Had to remember the hors d'oeuvres. And I got there, I went in my uniform, and there's really no climax to this story. It was just degrading. I have a lot less dignity if I need a lot. If I'm desperate for cash, I'll do it all. But essentially did data entry for the grades for this dental surgeon certification. And it was alright. I mean, it was 12 hours of just data entry, and I realized that attention to detail is hard after 10 hours, and I also realized that I probably have severe ADHD because I was in a lot of pain throughout that job because I had to focus for so long, and I'm pretty sure a lot of dental surgeons got their grade wrong. But that's life. You live, you learn. I'm sure there's some process that figured it out and corrected my errors, and if there wasn't, it's on them, you know? The job that I had was doing surveys for a market research company where participants would wear eye tracking glasses, and we would administer these surveys, and they would kind of build like, I don't know, like a McDonald's stand, and you know, you kind of see where people look at and then you record those results. And that's a job where I met some of the most miserable employees doing a 9 to 5 for 40 grand a year, and they just looked so defeated. Doing some construction and they needed some bodies, and you got paid extra if you did the construction, so I volunteered thinking I'm a tough guy. No, I have soft hands, I can't do this. My delicate body won't handle hard manual labor. I need one of those fancy nerd jobs. In the line, this is a job that I quit in one day. It was a telemarketing job essentially. I still don't know what the software is, but it's a marketing thing that they sold to businesses, and you just had to call a bunch of businesses and say, hey, you want to buy our thing? And you just did these calls for 8 hours a day, and nobody wanted to hear from you. I also realized there that you gotta start your own thing to make some real money. The 9 to 5 is not it. This next job, I was a fitness advisor for a large multinational gym. I don't know if it's multinational. For a large gym. And what a fitness advisor does is walk around the gyms and upsells personal trainers and different programs to clients based off of a commission. And they had a special training to make extra good salespeople. Here I really learned how much of a cult this is. Okay, my next job is when I'm doing my master's degree. I was sent for 4 courses. I graded them. I essentially led tutorials and graded papers, and nobody really cared. Really, we were just cheap labor to do the grading that professors didn't want to do, and we're also trying to, just go through the motions. Get the grade, get the degree, so we can start our lives and make some money and continue this stupid chain. For the gym is, a lot of gym goers are in cults. Get out. From being a teaching assistant is exploitation, goes way too deep. University for the life experience, the education, the growth. Don't go to it for a degree that'll promise you a job, because you probably won't get it. My first big boy job, my first 9 to 5, my first full-time hours was at a medical body. Was at an association for provincial doctors and medical professionals in my province, which is kind of like a state. My job was to manage their elections, and I had a lot of interactions with all types of doctors in many specialties, and I learned that some doctors are very nice, very kind, but most of them are just arrogant, power-hungry jerks. Was me trying to start my own startup. My first little startup. It was called Safe 6. Like Toronto's Safe 6, yeah! The idea was to sell these keychain alarms where it's like a sound grenade, where you have it on your keychain, and if you pull it really hard, it makes a very loud sound. I thought that could help students and vulnerable people. And if you're just walking around at night by yourself and you're scared, you have this, and it was difficult to, nobody wanted it. I was trying to sell it to universities, and I was trying to sell it to corporations, and everyone just ignored me. And I even tried some advertisements that were quickly put together, and didn't work. Entrepreneurship's hard, and we'll find out more about why it's hard. I learned from OMA that people in the good jobs, the lawyers, the doctors, the engineers, they're kind of jerks. A lot of them are jerks because they're power hungry. It's a bunch of jobs that I've had through law school, and these are a bit more formal and organized. They're not just random jobs. And Okay, technically I've had like 25 or 30 jobs if you count the different RA and TA and graduate, sorry, if you count the different research assistants and teaching assistants and graduate assistant positions, because all as separate jobs, but I'm gonna group them into just headings if I've worked. So at my law school, I worked for 4 professors doing separate research projects under them, and I think what I learned was professors they work very much. They work like 12-hour days just doing stuff. It's not a very easy gig. Oh, it's a bunch of jobs that I've had through law school, and these are a bit more formal and organized. They're not just random jobs. And okay, technically I've had like 25 or 30 jobs if you count the different RA and TA and if you count the different research assistants and teaching assistants and graduate assistant positions, because all as separate jobs, but I'm gonna group them into just headings if I've worked. So at my law school, I worked for 4 professors doing separate research projects under them, and I think what I learned was professors they work very much. They work like 12-hour days just doing stuff. It's not a very easy gig. I also worked at another school as a TA again, just doing grading stuff. And then I worked as a graduate assistant helping partly lecture some material in tutorials. But that was at another school. It wasn't at my law school. So I'm gonna count that as a different one. Big job was being a summer associate at a big law firm, and it was amazing. You know, you just don't do any real work. Well, okay, in my office, there's a special quirk where they try to give you a taste of the real work, and traditionally it's supposed to be, they take you out for drinks, they take you out for food, fun events. I heard some law firm went to like a Taylor Swift concert or a Beyonce concert, and you don't do any real actual work. But my office had a quirk of like, okay, we'll give them a taste of actual work so that they're not so, in shock when they come back in their first year, for better or for worse. It was also during COVID, so I just I guess it wasn't that amazing because it was less events. Because there was no events, and I just got to Uber Eats a bunch of food on their dime. So my next job, startup number 2, this time with my friends of 20 years then, 25 years now. And it was basically trying to mimic WeWork, except on a smaller scale. Didn't work out. Because the main thing that we thought was, okay, it's COVID, a lot of these office spaces are going empty, and it's gonna stay empty. There's not gonna be a return to work, which is partly true, and it's still true now, and I think this idea still works, which is why I'm a failure as an entrepreneur. But this was my first startup with my best friends, and it was great, but it didn't go anywhere. I went back to the same firm from my summer, and I worked many hours, and I'll make another video about what it's like to be a big law lawyer, but it's just a lot of money for a lot of time, probably making what certain CEOs make in this country, because we're grossly underpaid, but the US is grossly overpaid, and the conversion from USD to Canadian was very sweet. I'm gonna keep pursuing this entrepreneurship journey. Ugh, I hate that word. I'm gonna keep being a deadbeat, alright? See if anything works. See ya.